Alright, this movie guy, I just finished the season 6 of Vikings. No, the mid-season, so there's a second part with 10 more episodes, and it's basically going to be the end of the whole series. How did Vikings end? Spoiler. First of all, I'm going to give a rate. I'm going to give the rating at the end. But it's definitely higher than a 4 for the last... Well, there's two things. There's the last few episodes, because I think I rated up till 8, if I'm not mistaken. And there's also the entirety. So, because of... this is just other music. Because of expectations that were not exceeded about what the season 6 would be about, it was already in the 4.3 range. And because... it wasn't bad, it was actually pretty good. The acting and everything, and the storyline was decent and well thought out and interesting. It definitely reached closer to a 4.5. So, you know, if you don't have any pet peeves about the characters, about the acting, about the plot, then you may rate it higher than I did. But for me, it was closer to like, you know, I already rated it. But as a whole, I give it 4.6, so it doesn't get that much better, but it's still very good. Now, spoiler, and out of 10, it'll be like an 8.7. You know, the whole season, an 8.7. And then there's just this portion, which would be just this part, which would also be like an 8.7, let's say, or 8 well, it's not, you know, averaging perfectly. Okay, so we got a decent ending, but you may not like it because what happened was the main character, Bjorn, was killed off, supposedly. There's no way he can come back after that. Well, first of all, they're known for getting rid of important characters. Keeps it interesting, keeps the good players that you enjoyed in your mind and likable forever. Apparently, when someone dies prematurely, you remember them before they develop bad taste in your mouth. Like they say, familiarity breeds contempt. It seems to be the director holds this as like a rule, which is not a rule. It's just his opinion. It seems it kills off amazing characters and things that people that you want to see good things with. But then on the other hand, he's basing things off of the mythology that was found, that was dug up from the Norse mythologies and the Norse stories and historical events as well. So if that's all true, and they're just basing it off of what's already written, then I can't have so many complaints. But I doubt it. I think Hollywood and what most directors do in general, you know, not just to make it look good, but to make to be able to create a whole new storyline, they have to tweak the story. So I think they could have done a lot more with not killing people off the way they did. With Bjorn's death, I was a little bothered because what it represents is Bjorn and the King of Norway. So basically, they're forced into moving to a new place. So the only way the plot can go now is they have to migrate. That's the main way the plot, and months go by, especially because the next episode is in like 8 months, like December, October, November. Yeah, it's like 8 to 10 months where we get back into the series here, which is crazy. They probably you know, develop the appearance a bit to show that a lot of time has passed. They're probably going to move to Iceland or other areas, and they're going to develop colonies there and maybe develop an army, unite factions, and then wage war and then make a comeback in some way. And one of the anticlimactic elements was that Ivor was a horrible person, and then he wins. Like he was winning, and I'm thinking, why is he doing? No one likes this guy Ivor. He's okay, acting wise, very impressive. Like I'm so convinced he's an actual cripple, but we don't like him. He's a terrible person, and that's the way you're moving the plot. Just it's not bad. It's just not good either. It's like, who you're trying to touch? People who don't like that. Like most of the population's not gonna like Ivor, but apparently, reverse psychology and human nature being messed up, we will like it because we want the cripple, the underdog, and we want the evil one, the less popular person, to have some leverage. So it's you're being, without realizing it, the director's being cliche. Another thing to point out is that they made the guy who was destined to kill Lagertha, the same guy who rejoins with Ivor after getting over his mental illness. So he got over his mental illness, he stopped hallucinating, he stopped acting crazy, but only to join Ivor. What does that show to the audience? That deep inside, his real pains was the fact that he really cared about Ivor, or he really cared about Ivor's cause, and he betrayed him. Is that why? The inner turmoil came from that? When he killed Lagertha because he thought it was Ivor? It's so anticlimactic, it's not even... I can't even begin. It's like, what the hell were you thinking? So I thought that was a terrible plotline. I mean, like I said, it's interesting because you want to know what happens in this world, but it's like the director decided to take a certain plotline. It's like, we don't like that. Look at the ratings, which I'm assuming that the ratings follow me a little bit. And no, the director keeps going that direction. No, we'll keep him in there. No, we'll give him more leverage. No, we'll see what happens to this. So it's not bad. It's just not my... It's not my forte. So, I said... yeah, so I'm going to have to lower the rating to like an 8.5. At least for this episode, Yeah. And then out of 5, I'd give it... This particular episode, I'll give it like a 4.5. But a couple episodes that didn't rate, I'll give that like a 4.7. And then the whole season, out of 5, it's like a 4... It's like a 4.4. Whatever, in that zone. It's not bad, but it's not getting it's not getting a perfect rating, obviously. It just, what else? Oh, so I was so curious what happened with Floki, but there's been implications that Floki is not ever going to be important, because we found out that a Christian guy was pretending to be Viking, so he was hiding out in the hills. Apparently, before they came, it's hard to say. Maybe he came with, pretending that he was Viking. I couldn't follow that part. It just didn't interest me that much. But what I do know is there was a Christian living among them, and that's why Floki was so angry and so surprised that the Christian God is what was calling him to the cave. And so he definitely, so at this point, he's dead. He's dead. So the only way that he's coming back is if the director decides that he wants to surprise us. But if we're still holding on to that thread, maybe he won't do it. So I can just Google search whether or not Floki's gonna come back. You can't trust these he'll coming back stuff, especially in something like this, because what happens is the directors put in like flashbacks and hallucinations, and things that auditory hallucinations where you hear someone's voice and you don't know. So they're probably coming back in some fashion that's not necessarily in the show, Because in those days, it's very realistic. People hallucinated. They're under a lot of stress, under a lot of pressure. The heart is not working. The heart is overworking. And so blood and hormones and things are just flying. That hallucinations are just something that happened back then during times of battle. So it's very realistic that these kings and these people are hearing voices of their people that they're enemies and the people that they like, and they're listening to those voices, and so that's realistic. That probably did happen, and it's also part of why prophecy was more common, because people were less critical about stuff like that, saying it's mental illness and this and that. So I don't know for sure if Loki's coming back. I don't know what the director's thinking. I personally would like him to come back. I thought that was going to be the whole point of the next season, but apparently that's in the trash, and there was hints that that they should let it go. The director often, is careful not to make women too treaded upon. So one of the things that happened was the Shield Maiden was raped in this show, but you know what happens? The one who raped her dies. Like 99.9% dies. Bjorn is supposedly dead. But there's also a chance that he lived. Maybe he got stabbed and he lives. That's lower. I think it's more likely that Bjorn lives versus the King of Norway. But I think that Bjorn living is like 5%. And the King of Norway living is like 1%. So they're probably both dead. Just the way they both were stabbed. They both were on the floor. They both had given up. And so that's pretty much the end of those two characters. And it's consistent with letting go of characters in a way that you can remember them by. The King of Norway is going to be remembered for being a rapist and not a good king. And Bjorn is going to be remembered for being the true king, or the person who should have been king. And he was a good warrior. And, and the crown was taken by the king's side. That must have hurt him, which was good. But I don't know who's going to be king next, So I mentioned all my feelings. I'll put the ratings in the bottom so people don't have to go through all 12 minutes.